First we have Michael Klaus Schmidt and then Aman Sardar Malik. They're both commissioned artists. Their work adorns our walls. Some of you have seen those, but that's not relevant to our discussion today. But what they have to say is relevant to our discussion. So, Michael, when you first heard about and us hosting it, as an artist and as a Muslim, you had some doubts, some concerns. I'd like you to talk about it. Aman, I value your judgment a lot. I respect your opinion. So I asked you what you think of it. This is before we even approached Sandow. So I asked Aman what she thinks of this project. Should we host it? How will it be perceived? She wrote me a long email. She doesn't write long emails. She wrote me a long email. At the end of it, she said, as a Muslim, as an artist, so we should not host it. Okay. And she gave me her reasons. So appreciated that. No love lost. She has done quite then. And she had no obligation to support or not support this project. So she expressed her opinion the way she saw it at that time. The night she came with her husband, they looked at the paintings, and later on I asked her, and I'll let her talk about it when it gets to it. Zafar Malik, in a way he's responsible for this whole project. I had known about this project for some time. It had been in my business plan for Sabeel Center, but it kept getting put on back burner for one reason or another. And then one day we were having a meeting about actually another artist, legendary Pakistani artist Saad Khan's work here. And in the course of the discussions, Zafar Malik Bhai brought up Sandow Park and his American Qur'an project. Okay, that's my impetus. I need to start thinking about it more seriously. So one thing led to another, and it's here. So if you like this project, I'll take the credit. If you don't like it, it's Zafar Bhai's fault. With that, go ahead, Michael, you first.
Okay, thank you. I'm Michael Klaus Schmidt. I'm an artist. I've been doing art since I was a wee lad. And in 1996, I became Muslim. And so I felt like this project was something interesting to me, automatically. Although, when I found out Sandow was not a Muslim making a Quran, that's where I got a little skeptical. You know, I thought, okay, who is this guy? I didn't know anything about him. But since Rizwan was kind enough to invite us, my wife and I came, and when I heard him speak, it clarified all of my concerns. Because, well, first of all, as an artist, I saw what he did, and I know how much, I've done some projects, I've done some pretty big projects, I've done projects that go about 5 years, at the max. And when I heard he did something that took him 9 years, I was like, okay, yeah, that's pretty amazing. So as an artist, I was like very much sort of in awe of what he had done, because it's a huge project. And if nothing else, it's a labor, it had to be a labor of love. It could not have been something out of any negative space, because there's no way you can, it's hard to describe, but as an artist I can understand he must have loved this project to complete it, and he did complete it. It's pretty amazing. And when I heard him speak and explain his rationale behind it, that's when it all came together, and I realized this is a person, from what I could tell, he explained that he had seen what was happening in America post 9/11, where Muslims were being, demonized a lot and spoken about, and everybody had an opinion, and everybody knew this about them, and knew that about them, and he had been to Muslim countries as a surfer, I believe, and he didn't see those things. So for me, that was amazing to hear someone with that experience, that background, and coming in and saying, look, this isn't my experience of Muslims. And I think maybe there's some, misinformation being spread, and this was an effort to clarify, maybe, and highlight what real Islam is and what real Muslims are, and what other kind of discussion we can have about Islam and Muslims in the United States. So for me, that was, I love the project. So Thank you very much.
Seems like it's double. The laptop was making too much noise, so I turned it.
Can I turn it on or?
We can try turning it on. See if it ends. You just turn it on. Right. Oh, that's in
Ms. Wan, did I talk about myself?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Thank you. Aman.
How do you get it on the screen?
Oh, I put we need a full-time audiovisual person
Yeah.
here at FA.
I'm not very technical.
I'm going to say, that one was right in the middle. I'll bring it back.
Sure.
I don't know. Okay. It's one of these function keys.
At the Civil Center for holding this special gathering. And I'll just give a little introduction about myself. My name is Emma Sardar, and I grew up in Karachi, in Pakistan. And I've been painting for almost 15 years now. I did my undergrad from the National College of Arts in Pakistan. And when I first heard about Sanderberg's work, I just Googled it at home. And honestly, I found it very overwhelming because I myself don't have much knowledge about the content of each surah. So I was not able to create a link with each illustration. And when I was asked whether this work should be displayed, like Rizwan said, I was totally against it. I thought it might get controversial, it might offend some people because it had some the faces and the human bodies which are totally, in our religion, they're not favored. But after a few weeks, there was an opening night held and the artist himself was present. We had an open discussion, there was a presentation where I learned more about the artwork. Now that night when I came back home, my opinion changed completely. Now what made me change my mind? So for those of you who have read the Quran, you should know that the Quran has provided us with a complete code of life for humanity. The artist here is trying to make us understand the Quran from a very different perspective. He spent 9 years of his life studying this and working on this project, and he was trying to understand the Quran at the same time. And at the same time, he was traveling to different countries, to different Muslim countries, where he learned about the different practices and the growth of Islam that happened over the centuries. And if he was working on this project, it means that he was actually studying and doing research about the Quran itself. And believe me, if you read the Quran as an artist, it's like a story. I start imagining things, my mind starts creating visuals when I read the Quran. And I feel like this is what was happening with him. Because art is not a limited field. It is a very wide expression, you cannot limit it. And at the same time, I feel like he was very cautious to not trespass anything that might have appeared controversial. And I think even if I'm reading, for example, if I read the Bible, I will have a totally different point of view. I will have different imagery in my mind. Or if I'm reading Ramayana, which is a Hindu book, I will have a totally different feel. So if he was reading the Quran, this is his way, his perspective. And right now, I don't have much time to go through all the 114 surahs. So I picked the last two surahs of the Quran, which are Surah Nas and Surah Falaq. And this is the painting that he made on these two surahs. Now, if you take the crux of the two surahs, mankind is warned and advised to seek refuge of God Almighty from all the evils that every human being experiences every day. Now, when we look at this painting, it is not even close to our understanding of our Quran, being a Muslim. But if you read the first line of Surah Falaq, I'm going to translate it for you. It says, Kul auzu bi rabbil falaq. Say, I seek refuge in the Lord of the daybreak. And in Urdu it says, Kaho panah mangta hu main subah ke Rabb se. Now, how do you create that connection? He has taken the word daybreak from the Quran and he has produced a scene of daybreak over here. So when I asked the artist, how did you link this, because I am really confused. So he told me, this is how he explained to me, that this is a scene from daybreak where it reminds him of a ritual that used to happen during his life since he was 11 years old. He would go surfing with his family every now and then. So the word daybreak taken from Surah Falaq is how he produced this art piece. Because art, like I said, it is a very wide expression. It is a voice. You cannot limit it. Everyone has their own perceptions of and visualizing it in a different way. So in the end, I just want to say that after doing a lot of research and studying, I felt like the American Quran really left a lot of impact on me. Because how many of us really read the Quran with meanings and understand it? Honestly, I myself, I'm an artist and I'm a Muslim, but I felt ashamed of myself for lacking so much Quranic knowledge. After this project, I actually started to open the Quran and read, study, this is the meaning, okay, this is a translation, this is the explanation. And I feel like it's work done with a lot of commitment and there's a lot of hard work put in as well. And in the end, I just want to say thank you to Sandra Berg for making me look at the Quran from a very different perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Aman. You're not the only one who started reading the Quran after talking to Sandel. This work is from a gallery in San Francisco, Catherine Clark Gallery. So during the time when I was... During the time when I was exploring bringing this project to Saville Center, there were certain things that I couldn't answer for myself. And since we were going to rent it from Catherine Clark Gallery, I talked to the lady that gallery is named after, the owner, Catherine Clark. She's a non-believer. She told me that from a very young age, she has never read a religious text, any religious text. And she has also known Sandel for about 25 years. And when he approached her with this project, she, out of curiosity, started to read the Quran, the English translation of it. And as it turns out, this is the only religious text that she has ever read. And she liked the project in all of its implications and artistic value. So that long conversation with Catherine Clark is one of the reasons we are here tonight. Zafar Malik is a pillar of Muslim community in the Chicago area. He's an artist, he's an educator. I value his opinion a lot. And he has a very unique perspective on the importance and significance of this work at an institution like ours and for the Muslim community. Zafar Bhai.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much, Rizwan, for organizing this. I think it's wonderful. Kamar, it was brilliant. I really liked that, and I think it was good that it's an all-rounded kind of discussion, and it's good that it's happening at a Muslim cultural center rather than a mainstream cultural center, because we've been shy of doing this. So I come from it from a different perspective, and thank you, Nafisa, for speaking to Sandal's work and the monumentality of it. it's, I was in England when Salman Rushdie wrote his Islamic verses. And actually, my own activism begins around that time, 1989 or whatever. Muslims were absolutely aghast at what had happened, and they didn't know what to do. And to this day, several incidents have happened. And every time our reaction is the same. And this is a breath of fresh air, Sabil Center. And I hope that there are hundreds like this in the future for the growth and nurturing of Muslim community. Because we are in transition, travel from wherever we travel, and we take offense at everything. And you know, weaker communities and communities when they are broken and they are finding new home, they're always like this. I remember Satanic Verses protests in London, and nobody was listening. In fact, we made that book a bestseller. And somebody in Bradford burnt a copy. And that was sacrilegious. But at the same time, Royal Court had a play called Perdition, which was produced by two Jewish playwright and an atheist playwright. Perdition was about Jewish collaboration with the Nazis. There were no protests, nobody marched, but it was pulled. After full rehearsals, everything, it was, you know, just a week before it was good to go on. And that actually taught me something about how communities can organize. And all of us have peculiar interests and sensibilities, and we want to be seen to be magnanimous, you know, about things, and not to be picky on things. And you know, Muslims were coming across as clumsy. I remember Hanif Qureshi debating for the book with a friend of mine who was working for the Race Relations Board at the time, and he came on the stage with my friend with a bottle of beer in his hand. You know, this is like to rub it in, and then saying that, you know, there's a book in published by Penguin, and I don't want to read it ever, but I wouldn't want it banned. That's the Qur'an by N.J. Dawud, you know, translation of the words. So those kind of things were happening, you know, where Muslims were kind of being pushed to the wall. But we haven't learned anything. We haven't done anything different since then. The cartoon saga, you know, the Charlie Hebdo thing, you know, and 9/11 and everything. And I'm reminded of Mahmoud Mamdani, the great anthropologist at Columbia, wrote this, and his interest is not in writing about Muslims or whatever, but he wrote this book called Good Muslim, Bad Muslim. And I remember him coming here at the book launch and saying that, you know, I was talking to my father, and my father said to me that, how come, you know, that this thing happened in America and everybody's running to buy the Quran. Bookshops have run out of Quran. But when Americans bomb the world over, nobody runs over to buy Bibles. So I think it's that kind of thing, you know, you come to, a society comes to a thing. So I found solace in the work of mostly non-Muslims, many atheists, Christians or Jewish or Hindus, you know. And we've been turned down, I mean, many times. I remember going to the Chicago Tribune because they had got rid of 2 Muslim writers, op-ed writers, just after 9/11. And going to them and talking to the editors, a group of us went there and saying that, you know, you must privilege some Muslim writers or non-Muslim writers who actually are going to write from a different perspective. And they said, yes, of course we will do that. You know. I remember giving them a list of 100 writers, 60 international, 40 US. Okay. Not a single one has been privileged to date. So I mean, there are those kind of discriminations. But what we needed to do as Muslims and as new citizens of this country or in Europe is to establish centers where we could do this, we could debate this, even controversial things. And so Sandow's work was, when I first heard about it, and it was just when it was being shown at the gallery in San Francisco, and my daughter lives there. So I told them immediately to go there, and I read a few reviews which are mostly favorable, but one or two really nasty ones. But I knew then that this is something that Muslim community needs to promote, because there are very few projects that are being done to provide us solace, to look at us favorably, to look at us, clearly without any prejudices, to come to us as friends. And if we don't do it, who is going to do that? If we also neglect it. So it's in light of that I suggested to Rizwan that in your programming, we really need to do this. And I think this is the first thing that I've seen really that's that healthy at Sabeel Center. They've done many things, but I think a lot of things are intra-community, so that's different. But this thing is really, and I think people are not ready yet for a lot of things, but I think you've taken a great step, and I think this is going to go far. So it's this kind of thing, so I think internally we need to have a discussion, Muslims amongst ourselves, to see where we are headed. We are new citizens, we don't know all the ways and byways. I remember being told at an interfaith thing that, the rest of us Americans believe in the First Amendment, but Muslims don't. I mean, it's very stark, but I think it's going to get better. I think I have a lot of faith in the young Muslims who are growing up and finding that there's a lot of discrimination, but despite that, and I shouldn't speak too soon because Trump is in charge, so, but I think things are getting better. So, and Sandow, you played a huge part in doing this, and you made good Muslims of a lot of us. So, thank you very much.
In case anyone was wondering, Sandow didn't pay any of these guys to say any of this stuff. Neither did we. Sandow, your thoughts on your experience with us so far, anything you heard tonight, anything that have come up, whether when you were in Chicago or when you were not in Chicago.
Sure.
Floor is all yours.
I don't have anything prepared to say or anything. I'm happy to sit and discuss things with you, but this is really fantastic to hear all you saying this stuff. It's like I'm getting an award or something. Like you pointed out, I started this project, it's been more than 10 years ago, and I started it out of interest in world events, about my personal travels, having been places in the world, and being upset mostly about the war in Iraq, the American invasion in Iraq, which I was horribly against. And this general realization that despite the constant American discussion at the time after 9/11 in the media and the radio and everything about what Islam is and what Muslims are, and it just sort of dawned on me that I thought of myself as a well-traveled, intelligent, college-educated person, and I had no idea. And out of my own curiosity, I decided to investigate and learn more about Islam. And so the project began out of my own personal reading of the Qur'an and reading more and more deeper, and then about the Qur'an and the history, and getting in touch with people, and then it grew into this idea to make an illuminated manuscript, and then people came and supported that idea, and as it went along, it took, I imagined it was going to take me 4 years, and I think after the 5th year I sat down and started to figure out, and I thought, man, I must be almost done, and I started counting like how much, and I said, I'm not even halfway through, and there was these moments of being overwhelmed that it was too big of a project to deal with, and that I'm working alone in a small room, and who's ever going to look at it? And eventually, you know, my goal after first being interested in myself and trying to learn was that then non-Muslim Americans would see it, was my dream, and that they would learn something about Islam, and that Muslims themselves would see it and ponder it. Never even really occurred to me. So the fact that you're all finding it inspirational as well is really amazing. And bringing it here for you to see it, it's really amazing to me. And another point, when it was first sort of, in general, when Muslims first hear about it, I think they're skeptical and trepidatious, and I think they often come to it, they start looking through my project, and it's 240 pages, and they start looking through and thinking, when am I going to find something that's offensive to me? And I think as Muslims, I think that's the wrong way to look at it. It's a big project. There's going to be a couple of pages that aren't even my favorites. But I think the way you should come to it is look at it and say, when am I going to find something that's really good in here? When is I'm going to find something that's inspirational? When is going to be the best part of this project? Instead of coming to it looking for the worst. And so, thank you for taking the time to think about it.
We'll have Q&A with the panelists in a minute. But now, why did we do this? What was the vision behind something like this? Why would a Muslim institution bring the work of an artist who, as far as I know, is not a Muslim? I don't go around asking people their religious affiliations unless it comes up in a conversation. But I know Sandhya is not Muslim, nor does he have a secret agenda to convert everyone in America to Islam or anything of that nature. The only people that I'd like to convert to Islam are Muslims. If you become better Muslims, the rest of the world will be a much better place. So why did we do this? I have been asked several questions, and I'm going to address some of those because it's imperative that we see the dark side of our community as well as the positive side. So there were objections, vociferous ones in many cases. But do we have the exhibit or not? Did anyone protest outside? I never saw one. Did people, practicing Muslims, did they come here and like it or not? 2 days ago, we had a couple, pillars of our society. Dr. Javed Bharti and his wife Razana Bharti, both are PhDs, highly intelligent people, very educated, very religious, very pious. They were like kids in a candy store. They looked at everything with so much curiosity and intrigue and kept pointing out to each other. They're about 70 years old. They were pointing out to each other the things that they noticed, the little points. And I kept asking them, do you find anything offensive? Not because I was looking for anything offensive, but from the perspective of a very religious couple. And they said, absolutely not. If anything, we find it very refreshing, as all of you said. So that's something I wanted to share with the community. I didn't ask for their permission to use their name, so if they want to chastise me, there's a long line of people. They can join the line. So no other Muslim institution, as far as I know, has hosted this exhibit. And that's something that needs to change. In exploring this project, it became very clear to me. And Dr. Chaudhry here and I had several discussions about it. We went back and forth. We became devil's advocates at times with each other. And the idea was to take these arguments to their logical conclusion and come up with an answer. And the answer had to be your name. Do we want to host this? Do we want to bring? And this is long before I even approach you. And then we realized that this is an artwork. This is an art exhibit. It's not a Qur'an exhibit. If you want to have a Qur'an exhibit someday, yes, we will have that, inshallah. But this is an art exhibit, and that's how it needs to be treated. At the same time, we're not an art museum. We're not an art gallery. We're not a university. We, unlike the people that Zafar Malik was pointing out, we Muslims believe in free speech and all that. But by the same token, we also have the right to like something or not like something. And as an organization, we have the right to bring something or not bring something here. So we did. I spoke with a number of friends. Some had seen this exhibit in person in San Francisco, some hadn't. And all of them were at the opening night, and I credited them with their belief. One of our non-Muslim, one of our convert friends pointed out something that was very revealing, very profound. She said that when she converted to Islam, she wished there was a project like this, so that she could bring her non-Muslim family to it, because they were intrigued. They were supportive of her right to convert, but they wanted to know, what is it that you converted? And this is a little before 9/11. So imagine the tumultuous environment that she became a new Muslim. So we wish you had done this 20 years ago. Better late than never. This is also the kind of work that I think Muslim organizations should do. That's not the intent of Sandow Burke or any of the galleries that, who did this. But this is refreshing for us, and we have the right to support what we like as a community, as organizations. There's something even more important. It's not just hosting an exhibit, there's a vision behind it. I also want us, our community, our leaders, us, all of us, to be part of a discussion about us. Time and time again, it pains me, it aches me, and I'm not the only one in this room. When we see that the discussion is taking place about Islam and Muslims, but we are nowhere to be found. We're not even at the table. In most cases, we don't even know where the table is. That ought to change. And it will change when we do things like this. Some of the objections, as I've said in many of our previous events, this is a place for community building and learning. If we come here and do not learn a single thing during our time here, we are failing. So I'd like you to know about some of the objections that we have overcome. Those are valid points. So let's not make a mistake about that. It's one thing to ask a question, it's another thing to not be willing to listen to the answer. So the first question that I've been asked again and again, in person, over the phone, in emails, why an American Qur'an? Are you promoting some new kind of Qur'an? Is there a new interpretation of the Qur'an? Absolutely not. I'd rather be dead than be part of something like this. And anyone else who's been part of this organization would rather be dead than be part of something like that, something nefarious like that. So why is it called American Qur'an? For us Muslims, this is important for us to realize, and for our non-Muslim friends to realize. For us Muslims, there's only one Qur'an, the revealed Arabic text. Everything else, a translation, an interpretation, a commentary, a tafsir, an exegesis, a series of paintings, are of subjective nature. And we like some of those and we don't like some of those. Like many of you, I do not speak Arabic, so I have to rely on an English translation or Urdu translation to understand the text that guides my religious life. Nonetheless, it's not the Quran. So, to us, there is no Quran other than the one. However, this is what Sandow came up with. He has the right, and we have the right to stand behind it, not stand behind it. And some of you were at the opening night, so I want to remind you how he came up with this project. He had been researching and reading English translations of the Quran. And then one day he happened to be in Dublin, Ireland at the Beatty Museum, which happens to have the second largest collection of the Quran in the world. And he was looking at these highly illuminated, gold leaf, beautiful, beautiful Quranic manuscripts. And he said to himself, I'm an artist. I like to draw. Why don't I paint something? Why don't I draw something about it? I've been reading this book, why don't I draw something about it? And that became his American Qur'an project. As Shafisa pointed out, all of his works are called projects, and rightfully so. But this became American Qur'an project. So we need to keep those distinctions in mind. There were some objections about some of his other work. As Sandow alluded, some of his work is very political. And you may, as with any work of politics or religion, you may agree or not agree with any of those. That's our prerogative. But we didn't get into that. Some of the things I looked at, I liked, some I may not have liked, and others too. But that work is not here, so end of discussion. There is some very recent work on Sandow's website that's very graphic, very powerful. It's a very powerful statement. But it would be appropriate for an Islamic institution or any other religious institution. It's not here. Many of you were here when we had paintings and reproductions of legendary Pakistani artist Sadegh. Same kind of objection was raised about him and his work. Some of his work includes nudes. Are you going to have nudes at a place that's dedicated to Prophet Muhammad? No. We didn't have those, and we did have several other of his work which we thought were a bit too, not just controversial, we didn't agree with it. We have that right to agree with or not agree with. Nonetheless, the place upstairs was full of his original artwork as well as his reproductions. And there was some Quranic calligraphy in there too. And the event went very well. So we have to see things in a very holistic perspective, not just pick and choose. This is what Sandow was saying, that there are so many pages, what, 244 pages or something? I'm one of those people who was looking for anything objectionable, but not because I wanted to find faults with your work. I wanted to see if there is anything that people, or a lot of our people, would find objectionable, and if so, should we host this thing or not? Or do we stand behind it? One of my mandates from Dr. Chaudhary, the CEO of Ifanka, was that, Rizwan, if somebody raises an objection at the opening night or any other event, you ought to be able to answer it. That was a great challenge and a wonderful challenge, and I welcomed it and prepared ourselves for it. Nobody objected. Probably because they know I don't react very well to objections. No, I was looking for it, didn't find it. One question someone recently asked me, without coming to the exhibit, and a Muslim guy, will I become a better Muslim by looking at this exhibit? I said, I didn't see that as an objective of our exhibit. You want to become a better Muslim? Pick up the book, read it, try to follow it. Of course, then we hear from someone like Aman, who found it inspiring enough to go back and read the Quran with a different perspective. And I don't mean to chastise the Muslim community. These are outliers, statistically speaking. Nonetheless, these are valid concerns, and they needed to be overcome. Just like Michael and Aman did, they had certain concerns, questions, or question marks, and they got their answers. So we need to have that open mind about things. Lastly, the mundanity of it. The work was very mundane. Unlike the other manuscripts of the Quran, which are illuminated, very, very expensive, typically commissioned by a very rich person or an emperor or a king, and then they sit in museums. Nothing wrong with that approach. But those of you who were here at the opening night, I'd like you to remember how we started that event, that evening, by reminding ourselves of a story of Prophet Moses, peace be upon him. It's in the Islamic literature. He once saw a shepherd, in his words retelling, he once saw a shepherd talking to God in his own way, in his mundane way. He was expressing his love for God by saying, I wish I could see you. I wish you could come to me. I would give you the milk of the best goats that I have. I would put the best oil that I could find in your hair. So he had anthropomorphized Allah, God. Prophet Moses in Islamic literature has a very aggressive personality. So he didn't like any of this, and he went to him and said, what utter nonsense. God doesn't need any of this. And the poor fellow felt very dejected and walked away. And then a wahi, a revelation came to Musa alayhi salam, saying, I sent you to bring people closer to me. This was the highest intellectual level that he could muster, and you pushed him away? Obviously, Musa alayhi salam went back to him, and hopefully things worked out. I'm not drawing a parallel between that shepherd and this work. This is a lot more profound, a lot more intellectually challenging. It makes you think. I cannot tell you how many guided tours we have had. I have lost track of it. But today, this morning, was perhaps the best tour that I've had. Thanks for some of the ladies who came here. The things that they saw that had escaped me. The paintings about Surah Maryam, chapter 19, Mary, there's a little hotel sign that says no vacancy. Those of you who grew up in the Christian tradition know what that is about. How Mary and Joseph were rejected. So there are these little things that some of us had. I wish there was a way to capture it. But I hope you buy the book. We don't get any commissions or anything, nor do we would like it. But this is a wonderful book. I hope you buy it and enjoy it. Lastly, there's a feeling of melancholy, folks. And I've been feeling that since yesterday. It's like a friend who visits you, a dear friend who visits you, and now he's leaving. And that's the artwork that I'm talking about. It's been here for 3 months, and I feel like that was a fleeting moment. Fleeting moments just fly by you. We didn't do justice to it. There should have been more exposure to it. So much work at an organizational level went into it. And within the Chicago community, the Muslim community in Chicago didn't fully capture it. But at least we have taken first steps in that direction. Nafisa wrote a wonderful, wonderful review, not just of this exhibit, but Sandow's work in general. And it's published in artemisiainpakistan.com. So take the time to read it. It's not just about this project, but many of Sandow's other projects too. So those are my thoughts about the vision and why we did this and why we ought to do things like this. Here we are developing artwork about different aspects of Prophet Muhammad's life. And then this thing came along out of nowhere. And it has been a wonderful experience. Thanks for being part of this wonderful journey. Good night. We will have dinner soon. So now Q&A. Oops, you're short one chair. Now remember, as I pointed out, you're standing between us and dinner. So, questions?
No.
Comments?
Fight.
Felicia, you were asking a question. I'd like to know the answer too. So go ahead.
Any questions? This is for Sandow. Being an artist myself, primarily an author, I create a lot of my work alone. And I'm guessing that much of what you did here was solitary also. So I'm wondering, how did you balance the rest of your life? What did you do to maintain your sanity, for one thing? Because as far as I can tell, this work requires such extreme focus, determination, patience, experience. What did you do in the rest of your life while you were creating?
Did you have a rest of your
Your
life?
family?
Yeah, I mean, I've been an artist for 30 years.
Okay.
It's been my only occupation. I don't have a side job or anything. And we live in a studio where I work, so I work at home, and I paint every day, and the kids run around, and we get them to school, and my wife's an artist, and she works there too, and I didn't do anything different than what I'm still doing now, working on paintings. I did spend a lot more time working with mentors that I met. Shaukat Turawa at Cornell was in constant conversation with me through emails and things, and going to the library more, and going, we live in LA, so going around LA to see any kind of shows that were relevant, that were interesting. I saw a Persian painting show at the Norton Simon Museum 10 years ago or something that was really influential. but nothing more than normal. And
Did you
then,
continue to surf while you were?
sure, I have sort of a schedule.
Because the way that I'm seeing it is that you, the artist, is sitting here doing this meticulous work, and the surfer is fast, and it's out there on the water, and what a wonderful contrast that can be. This is just my mind, you know, trying to interpret, you know, what the experience is like for you. And any kind of, you know, amusement or distraction, but it doesn't sound like you succumb to that very much from what you're saying.
I don't know, we sort of have a schedule at home.
But your children weren't born yet when you started this, right?
Yeah, they weren't. And then we've had 2 kids during the project.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Well, that'll keep you busy.
Yeah. I don't know. I just sort of, I guess I'm disciplined. But we also did several other projects that broke it up. So Lisa and I did a huge mural project in San Francisco for a SF Jazz theater that they built. We did these big giant murals that took.
Painting?
No,
Oh,
they were
tiles.
tiles.
Yeah.
There were 2 tiles.
And
And
then,
it was beautiful. It was so big.
yeah.
Again.
So that took us almost a year off and on, so it was interspersed, so I would take breaks from the mental thinking of the Qur'an project.
Question over here.
So, Mr. Sandal Burke, why did you choose to do the American Qur'an?
I was interested in the combination of world events and places that I had traveled to and trying to learn more about Islam by myself. So I started reading the Quran and I found it fascinating. And then I started looking at historic handmade Qurans, and that made me think that it might be possible to make one by myself.
I think you should mention why it's called American Qur'an, that you did not particularly choose the name.
Right. Why is it called American Qur'an? I think the best title for it would be The Quran for Americans, but it just didn't seem like a good
Bit of a
title
mouthful,
in the
too.
bookstore. And the publisher said we should just call it American Qur'an. It's got better impact.
Thank you.
Did you have an exhibition of American Qur'an in any Islamic country?
I have not yet. It's only been shown inside the United States, about 10 different places.
Have you been approached or approached them to do the exhibition?
I don't do that myself. The galleries I work with are sort of in charge of trying to promote it. They've been talking about going to the art fair in Dubai, which is Biennale, I guess.
Don't do that.
I don't know if they're going. I don't know the status, but this is a step. Having a show here is a step towards it reaching a broader audience. So I hope someday it will reach people.
The panelists can ask questions too. Bonnie?
Have you considered eliminating any other religious manuscripts, more specifically an American Torah?
I did. I sort of rejected that. It was also, I started working on this Quran project, and then our Quran came out with his illustrated version of Genesis. It got quite a lot of attention, and I don't know. Perhaps. It didn't, it seemed, I had done the Dante's Inferno, which took so long, and the Divine Comedy, which was so much about Catholicism and the Christian view of the afterlife. I wanted to make a greater leap than Christianity to the Torah was like a small leap. I thought Christianity to Islam was a greater leap.
So now you could backtrack?
It could, yeah. It could. But I guess one thing that occurred to me during this discussion, I started this project and I was very nervous about it, for all the reasons maybe you've been nervous about it. But in the last 2 years, as the events in political America have evolved, it seems less and less time to be subtle and timid. It seems now we don't say, are we going to put on an art show and everyone's going to like it? We say, let's put on an art show and half the people like it and half the people hate it, and let's all argue about it. And that's the times that we live in, and that's better than. Now's the time for bolder actions, bolder statements, broader arguments, and being less kind to each other, I think. For better or for worse.
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
I found that in art, the discussions tend to go on a bit longer than in more, direct and more political arenas. When it's an art show, you can discuss something in more depth. And I think it's a great opportunity for artists to be able to engage in those and initiate those discussions. So.
I don't know, I'm very skeptical about you taking it to outside this country, to any Muslim country or any of Asia. I don't think it could be received properly.
It's not a short sell.
Yeah,
Over 1 billion people. Come on, you were skeptical about some of this work before you moderated an event. Your experience,
Yes,
what's been like?
I mean, again, I think the first time I heard about it with the title American Qur'an, like many others have also expressed, what can it be like, what does it look like, and so skepticism about it. But as I say, when I first saw it, there was some Jesus works in there, and there was some other three-dimensional metalworks. Was that the same?
Oh, is a different artist from the Singara?
Yeah, Singara, yeah. And so there were all these very highly, 3 different media and looking at this body of material in a different way. But very almost immediately my art history training kicked in, my history training kicked in, and I could suddenly see, without even knowing anything about the artist or the motivations. It wasn't until much later when you mentioned your visit to the Justice and all of that, and oh yeah, of course I can see it now. But it was already built into the work. It was already clearly informed by a lot of research and a lot of thinking through, and I think that's just something that's held my attention very carefully.
I just wanted to add something, sorry. That I think, yes, we are all skeptical about the Muslim world and various, but I feel very positive. I think now's the time, a lot is happening across the board, every country, We have had failed Arab Spring and, situation in Pakistan and Malaysia, Indonesia, what have you. And Africa too, But I feel very hopeful. I think there are enough people, there's enough mass to actually do things like this. So if Dubai, for example, the stuff being shown in Dubai, I would never predicted 5 years ago that they'd be showing this stuff. Okay? And being bought, being displayed at home. But more than that, I think the discussions, the conversations that are going on, are just absolutely huge. So I think I feel very hopeful that I think Muslim world, kicking and screaming, is coming into realizing that there are certain things have to be done. You just can't be protesting all the time about situations. You have to be participant in these things. And I think young artists are challenging. I'm very hopeful about Pakistan. The kind of stuff that young people are doing, or leaving Europe and America to go there and work in Pakistan, it's just huge.
And places like Turkey, and you'll be surprised by Iran. They are just don't listen to the propaganda here, but the kinds of things that Irani contemporary artists are doing is just phenomenal, isn't it?
We have an Irani film festival.
And the kind of magazines they have, the kind of writing they have, it's just beyond belief. And it's always multilingual. All their magazines are bilingual. It's always in Persian as well as in English.
And you may be surprised to find out, Sandow and Elise, that in Chicago we have an Irani film festival going on for over a decade now. I think we have time for 2 questions. Yvonne and then Nancy.
I just wanted to say I think this is a wonderful tool for schools. As a former teacher, I can remember trying to teach about Arab world and Islam and having very minimal resources, and really good ones, like from Georgetown University and so on, but But this is something I feel like could be put into a toolkit or something that, because when I, even as being Muslim almost 20 years, I'm looking at your art and seeing a reminder of what the surahs mean, and you know, the explanation of them, which is applicable to everyday life. So if children are learning about this, have no idea what Islam is, who Muslims are, but can just visualize it, that's an immediate way for them to learn. And so I'm wondering if you ever thought about reaching out to schools, or if have any schools reached out to you to kind of compress, you know, the material into some kind of curriculum. If not, it would be a great idea, I think.
No, that. I've spoken quite a bit at universities, at Islamic students and things.
I think the public schools could probably benefit more.
Sure, I'd be happy to.
I belong to
It's strange that I would become the spokesman of.
and we shouldn't try to portray you as a trophy, that look what we've got here, a non-Muslim American talking about us. That would be very patronizing, defeats the purpose, and takes away the profoundness, the profundity of this project. But to go back to your question, I plan to reach out to full-time Islamic schools, and I've been involved with them, and tell them about this project. And I wish they could come here. We didn't do a good job of marketing, reaching out to them. So that's my fault. But then there are many other cities where this project is going to go, and they should learn about it. Even if they can't go to an exhibit necessarily, they should learn about it. Nancy and
I more wanted to make a comment back to something that Sandow said and that you touched on as well, and that is, you know, stasis does not create change. It's the exchange of ideas, it is the discussion and the debate, and also, you know, it's the irritant that creates the pearl. So that's one thing I wanted to say, and another, you know, this show is going to Texas Tech, and Texas, I was an elementary school teacher and a professor, an educational anthropologist, and you know, Texas shapes the curriculum, and I don't know if anybody's read what they're doing now, things that they're taking out, you know, actual history, people that they're taking out of the textbooks and the curriculum. I think with this being at Texas Tech, somebody there needs to communicate with the publishers in Texas and the people who shape the curriculum. I taught at University of Texas San Antonio for 7 years, so it's very powerful. Your work is powerful, and maybe that can be a tool to again help create the pearl.
thanks.
I think Imam Sandow will do it.
Last question, Asif.
All right. So you mentioned that you traveled to some like Muslim countries, and that's where you got most of your work. I mean, you pictured like the decoration, the architecture, and that. I was just gonna ask, what are the country that has had most impact in your work that you think? What are the country that you got influenced more amongst those Muslim countries?
This is a test.
Well, the place I've been most is Indonesia. I've probably been there 6 or 7 times. Almost all the trips we do is either to do artworks or to go surfing. And so Indonesia is fantastic surfing. So. And then I've been surfing in India, in the Andaman Islands, and then we've been to Philippines. My wife is half Filipina. We went and visited her family in the Philippines. We went to Mindanao, and besides never been to the Middle East, but we've been to Morocco 3 times, I think, for a month each time. And just had fantastic experiences, and everywhere we go we try to see things, and actually we spent a lot of time in Paris. I did a lot of this project. I was in a residency in Paris for 3 months and went almost every day to the Institut du Monde Arabe there and looked at the library and all that. And Paris can be quite a Muslim city if you're in the right neighborhoods.
Yeah, so in fact, all the countries that you mentioned, except Morocco, they don't speak Arabic, which is
True.
fascinating.
And the Moroccans speak every language in
Yeah.
Spanish
Since
and
I was
Italian.
hoping to go for some Arab country, so we share one thing, my wife is half Filipino too. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone, thanks, panelists. Thanks.
That's what you.